Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about the snack business. And my guest today is Isabelle Lamb. She's the co-founder of a company called Remix Snacks. So welcome to the show, Isabelle.
Thank you, Lance, for having me.
It is my pleasure. And it is also my pleasure to be snacking on these snacks. And so you sent these out in advance of the show. And so I've been busting into some of them, as you can see already. Every flavor that I've tried so far is absolutely incredible. I love the subtleness of some of them, and just the really good dark chocolate, as well as the fact that this is actually pretty high in fiber and pretty high in protein as well, which is unusual for this category of snacks. So how did you guys do it? And tell me a little bit of the backstory of the start of Remix Snacks.
Yeah, for sure. So right now the product that you have is Bean Bark, which is a dark chocolate snack, and we added in black beans. That's where you get the high protein, the high fiber, the high iron. And then we also use upcycled fruits to reduce food waste. So we always wanted to have that kind of double-sided mission of, one, making nutritious, delicious snacks, because Jamie and I are actually registered dietitians, and then also having the environmental piece of using upcycled ingredients and being environmentally conscious. And so to kind of throw it back to 2018 when we first started, Jamie and I were studying in the nutrition program in Montreal at McGill, and it was our last year of our undergrad. We kind of wanted to do something fun to end off our degree, and there was a startup competition at the university. So we're like, okay, this could be fun. So we created an idea for it. It was originally a trail mix with black beans and upcycled fruits, and we started selling it at like a craft fair that we used to do. And that's how the idea started. We developed the pitch, not having any business background. We just did a lot of research, a lot of talking to people, and then that's how it really stemmed into what it is today.
Really cool. And so you weren't in business school, like you said. You were in the nutrition and dietitian school. Yeah. So do you have entrepreneurial, background? Like, are your family, your parents entrepreneurs? How did you decide that you wanted to get into the world of business?
Yeah, there were a few different things. So Jamie's dad actually owns a food company. So I think in the back of her mind as well, she talks about that. That was part of her life kind of growing up. And then during our undergrad, we used to sell these little cookie jars at the craft fair just for fun as like a side hobby. And so that really sparked our entrepreneurial spirit to be like, oh, this is fun. Like maybe we can combine this with something that we are also passionate about, which is nutrition. And so I think a combination of those things and being part of different clubs and organizations where we had leadership roles that are similar to the business realm was just like the perfect combo of us starting Remix.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now you said that you pivoted the business at the very beginning from a actual bar into then this really thin, call it bark, product. And so what was the reason for that? How did you guys decide that you needed to pivot?
Yeah, I think a big part was just talking to customers. So I mentioned that at the beginning, we were just doing little fairs and just giving it to families and friends and giving them a little survey. And a big feedback that we got back was that it was too hard. We actually had some customers complain that their teeth are going to break just from eating it. So we're like, oh, okay, that's a big red flag. We got to change something about it. And so we started adding in chocolate because everyone loves chocolate. And then as we kind of went along, started grinding down the beans because they're just pre-cooked dehydrated beans. And so we grounded that down to help with the texture and eventually got to what the bark is today. But it was a lot of iterations. I think we went through maybe 10 to 12 different iterations of the product just to get to the product that we're really happy with now.
Yeah, because there is definitely a lot of balancing that must have went on as you were doing your R&D into probably the texture, how finely you are grinding those beans. And then also I'd imagine what percentage of that overall mix needs to be the upcycled fruit so that you have, good flavor profile, but also it's sweet enough to counter what some people don't like about the dark chocolates is that bitterness of it.
Exactly. Yeah. We actually did a lot of our R&D just in our apartment. So it was very like grassroots, just trying that. And then eventually, as we moved to a copacker, they were able to help us kind of refine some of those ratios and textures as well.
Yeah, well, and I think you guys have landed on a really great blend because it is has a beautiful flavor, doesn't taste very bitter at all with that dark chocolate. So it's really enjoyable to eat. And then, yeah, the texture part of it, the incorporation of the ground beans, you definitely notice it. There's no question
Mhm.
about it, but it's not something where it's like, oh, what is that? The texture is actually really nice and not hard on the teeth at all.
Thank you.
So you,
Yeah,
you definitely overcame that challenge. It definitely is a wonderful product.
thank you.
So now, in terms of, you said you started doing the R&D then in your apartment in 2018-ish, then that's what it
Exactly.
was? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And so then when did you get to a place where you were working with the co-packers? How long did it take you to get to that level of scale so that you were ready to hit the market?
We actually didn't move to a co-packer until during COVID. So we started with them around last year. So three years into us starting off in the apartment as roommates, moving to a commercial kitchen, a shared commercial kitchen, just to meet all the food safety standards. And we were in that kitchen for 2 years, just us grinding it out, small team, 3 people, just creating all this bark and packaging it until during COVID when we started getting bigger distribution partners and realizing, okay, like is our time well spent in the kitchen or should we be spending this time in sales and marketing? And so that was a big decision for us. And we decided, okay, we're not chocolatiers. This is not our expertise. Let's give it to the people that know how to do it. And so we decided to move with the co-packer last year.
Excellent. So bring in the experts and
Exactly.
so that you can really focus on other aspects to really grow the business.
Yeah.
Now, was there any challenges in finding a co-packer? Can you walk us through a bit of your experience on that? Because I've heard from other guests, some of them, yeah, it was really easy. Other ones,
Mhm.
oh, it was a nightmare to really get the right co-packer.
Yeah, I would say it wasn't a smooth process, but it wasn't a super difficult process. When we first decided that we wanted to look into the co-packing realm, we reached out to different people within our community, especially the startup food community, who already knew maybe other chocolate factories that they had worked with or had heard about. And so that's actually how we met our current co-packer. It was just a recommendation. We reached out, had a bunch of questions about food safety and the process, and being a small company at that time, like what did it look like to be able to grow with this co-packer? Because we didn't want to be switching, every year to have someone be able to help us grow. So that was a big part of the, I guess, interview process, as you would call it, and just vetting them out. And we clicked right away. They knew where we were coming from, was able to help us kind of grow as we entered new distribution and bring bigger volumes. And so it wasn't, yeah, I guess looking back, it wasn't a terrible process for us, thankfully.
Yeah, and well, and you were doing all this through COVID as well,
Hmm.
which is also probably an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And your expansion from a marketing standpoint, from getting into other stores and retailers and so on, that was all happening through COVID. So tell us what kind of challenges you were having as you were navigating this COVID situation, trying to grow a business in it, trying to find new distribution when you really couldn't meet people in person, probably.
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, at the beginning of COVID, it wasn't all this growth. It was definitely a lot of sitting down, having those deep conversations of should we be even continuing this business, given that we're facing all these challenges of not being able to go in person and sample the product, which is so important for food.
Yeah.
And then we were part of an accelerator program, which then kind of helped open all these doors to new mentorships and new connections and help us find those distribution partners. And to be honest, to this day, we haven't met our co-packer or our distributors in person. A lot of it is just phone calls, Zoom calls, shipping product back and forth. So that's definitely been interesting. I'm hoping to meet them this summer finally. But yeah, I think we definitely found creative ways to be able to get that communication and get those products across without having to go in person, especially because they're all the way in Niagara and we're in Montreal. So just even like distance wise, it didn't make sense to go back and forth like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting, right? COVID has really opened up this ability to do business with people regardless of where
Hmm.
they're at, which
Exactly.
prior to might have been a lot more difficult because there would have been an expectation to be in person in some of these. But because of
Hmm.
COVID, you could do that all remotely, which is a nice side benefit of it. Yeah. So now I'm really curious about two young entrepreneurs starting out in the in business in the middle of COVID and all the other challenges that are happening through that time in those very early days of the company. What kind of challenges do you think that you faced that was unique to the fact that you're two young entrepreneurs that don't have a lot of experience in the food business. I mean, obviously, your partner has some family that's in it, but you guys individually weren't really working within that, and your education is not on business. And so, was there any unique challenges that you think that you faced because you were young entrepreneurs?
I think a big part is we didn't know what to expect. We kind of went into it blindly, kind of hoping for the best and not really understanding what it meant to build a business. And that was, I think, a pro and a con on our part. Pro being like we weren't fearful of it. It wasn't like we knew we were taking a risk, but we didn't know how big a risk. Versus when we talk to people that have business experience or did like an entrepreneurship degree or certificate, they're like, oh, like I would never do what you did because like I know of the risks A to Z and like that just wouldn't work. But for us, it was like, why not? Like we don't know what those risks are. Like we had no clue. So for us, I think we went into it a little bit naively, and that was a different experience for us. But it helped us be more open-minded, and the growth curve was like exponential in terms of even going from writing a business plan. We had absolutely no clue how to pitch, write a plan. So for us, that was a fun experience, I think. But for sure, there was a lot of learning, a lot of when we pitched the first time, the judges were like, oh, like you didn't talk about finances this way. And we like, oh, like that was obviously a hindrance for us in terms of the scorecard. But at the same time, I think people are super understanding when it comes to this, especially as there's more young entrepreneurs coming into the field, into the industry. There's a lot more support that we've seen over the years. So that's been definitely heartwarming and empowering too.
Yeah, and so you mentioned kind of ignorance is bliss,
Yeah.
and you were tying that to your youth, but it's actually really interesting because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, regardless of age, they have a very similar story in that sense, and even myself, actually starting the company that I'm running right now, Ample Media, that company was started for a different reason. I didn't look at the marketplace and analyze it and go, hey, there's an opportunity here. It was actually done out of desire to help somebody else. And so then as we were growing, the business started to, we really started to find the niche and really been able to cultivate that into something much bigger. But in the early days, it's the exact same thing. If I would have approached it from the business planning side of things, which I have lots of training in and have helped a lot of companies in because I had a consultancy before I started this, I probably wouldn't have because of the risks, because of the analysis. It's just like, I don't know, there's the runway for this, or some of the challenges that we're going to have are going to be difficult to overcome. And so it might not be something that is the right idea to start. And so in my case, ignorance was bliss as well in this particular industry. And so that's definitely not an age related thing. That's, I think, just the blind optimism that we have as entrepreneurs. I think it's something that we're either, kind of cursed with or gifted with, and depending on how you look at it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so really interesting. Okay, so let's fast forward to 2022 now. So when we're recording this is mid-May of 2022. Tell me the growth that you've experienced. What is the reason for that growth? What do you think that you've done right? And maybe some of the things that you've faced along the way as you've been growing it the last couple of years. But yeah, let's get into that growth period. What have you guys been doing there, and where's the wins, and tell me the backstory there.
Yeah, so I think thankfully we've experienced most of our growth during COVID. I know that's not always the case with most businesses, but I think because we were connected to that accelerator program early on in 2020, that once again opened all these doors to be able to have distributors that we didn't have before. And they helped us get into banners like the Metro and the Sobeys and the Loblaws of Ontario. And so that growth for us, we went from, I think, 50 stores at the beginning of COVID to now we're in over 300 stores across Canada. So that was a really nice growth to see for us over the last year and a half, and be able to be available to more consumers across Canada and really increase our brand awareness and have people be like, oh my God, yeah, like I saw that before, like I've tried it before. And these are complete strangers. I'll never forget like the first time someone emailed us or like commented on one of our posts being like, I love this product, and we had no clue who they were. So it's always fun to see that. And then as the growth continued with the copacker, that helped to just like continue the cycle of having larger volumes and being able to approach larger grocery stores and banners and being like, hey, we have the product available, and them taking it on and kind of continuing to grow that way. And then in terms of growth within our team as well, we were able to hire more interns and more employees to help us be kind of boots on the ground and visiting these retail stores, something that we struggled with during COVID, as many brands did, because like you don't want to be traveling as much. So having someone already in the city really helped us too. And the social media aspect as well, really growing that and getting a little more into TikTok, something that we're not very familiar with, but our social media manager is. So being able to have all these people that are helping us build this is something that we've really seen over the last year and a half too.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the role that marketing has played in your business and how maybe that has evolved and changed over from the early days to where you're at now as you're entering into a little bit more of a mature stage in the business. You mentioned TikTok, but tell me a little bit more about the strategy that you've employed and the reason for that and how it's been going, I guess.
So when we started off, a lot of our marketing was in person, because with food, we want to make sure that people are seeing it, tasting it, and it's always easiest when you're kind of face to face to get their initial reaction. So a lot of our initial marketing was farmers markets, demoing, sampling, stuff like that. And then obviously with COVID, all that shut down. And so we had to do a huge pivot to doing more online marketing and doing our like Shopify website and making sure that was nice. And so that was a lot of the initial pivot that we did in like March to May of 2020, and really focusing on social media. And that's actually when we started doing more like Facebook and Instagram ads, which is something that we've just continued to carry out to this day, because through research and surveys, we've realized a lot of the consumers that we're trying to target do look for new products online. So it's like, okay, how do we capture their like audience, their ability to find new products?
Yeah, a lot of people they debate whether or not social advertising or in particular like Instagram and TikTok and so on, if it actually works. I can attest that I am one of those people that get caught purchasing things off of Instagram very often. So they do work for sure. There's no question about it. And we do a lot of that with our clients as well. So for those reasons alone. Yeah. So what does the future hold now then? So you obviously are in growth mode. I suspect you're not taking your foot off that gas pedal. And so you're going to want to continue to grow. What's going to help you get to that next step or next stage of your company's development?
I think really just continuing to build that brand awareness. We're quite saturated within the Ontario market, and now we're trying to expand more towards the west, like BC, Alberta, and then also here in Quebec. And so getting our name out there, getting people trying the product and knowing what Remix Snacks and Bean Bark is really the next part of our development. We're also launching a new product soon. It's going to be savory, so it'll be interesting to kind of have that balance within, savory and then a sweet product as well to really help people purchase more and obviously increase basket size and all that fun stuff. So, yeah.
Really cool. So what do you think is going to be your biggest challenge as you do this next growth phase of your company?
I think one is, of course, financially. It's a lot of these new projects and new marketing strategies that we're trying to implement are expensive and it can add up. So it's okay, how do we find that balance between financing and also cash flow, but also wanting to invest into all these strategies, but not necessarily seeing the ROI till, a few months, half a year later. So that's something that I think we continue to struggle with as we grow. And also next is kind of leading into that is priorities. Like, there's 5,000 million things that we want to try implementing, but we're only a team of 4. So how do we spread our resources effectively and prioritize what we want to work on first and not kind of get ahead of ourselves too fast?
Yeah, very wise. I mean, one of the best things that I've ever heard or been ever coached on has
Mhm.
been, everything that you say yes to is essentially saying no to everything else because you only have so much time. And so when you
Yeah.
are an early stage company, the time resource for the founders, for the key team members, that's really valuable and very precious. And you have to really protect that because
Mhm.
it's so easy to get sidetracked and down some wormhole of potential opportunity or something that's flashy and looks like fun, and that, so you have to be really strategic about the use of your time. And so I'm glad to hear that that is something where you're really applying some focus and really realizing the importance of that. Now,
Mhm.
when you earlier, before we even hit the record button, you were talking about that it's been kind of tricky sometimes in making sure that you're aligning yourselves with the right partners or with the right vendors and people who are wanting to do business with you or help you and so on. So can you talk to us a little bit about that challenge and just how you overcome that as a new business without having, this decades of experience in the business world?
Yeah, I think as we've expanded, we've reached out or we started outsourcing a lot of the things and working with larger partners and not just people, but teams of people. And through that, we find ourselves, and recently we've discovered this, is kind of losing a little bit of that control because you're handing off so many different pieces of the puzzle. But at the end of the day, like we're the ones that have to kind of rein it in. And especially being young entrepreneurs, not having a lot of experience. And we're working with these people that have decades of experience. In the back of our minds, it's always like, oh, they know what they're doing. But what we kind of realize at the end of the day is it's our business. Like we're the ones in charge. We're the ones leading this. Like we have to kind of, as our mentor recently told us, like take the reins back in and like really hone everyone and make sure we're all on the same page, because at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal of trying to grow the company. So not getting lost in kind of like giving everything off, but not knowing what's happening and getting lost in communication. So something that we're still trying to figure out to this day.
Yeah. Are you using any philosophies, any tools, any resources to really hone that skill right now or to manage that a little bit better?
To be honest, no. I think as a team, we recently started using a project management software. I think that
Yeah.
really helped to have us all aligned on what each person is working on because we all manage a few different things. And then with the externals, that's what we're trying to figure out. What's the best way to kind of keep that inline communication and have everyone kind of on the same page without having the information being relayed through three different parties.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a remarkable thing, that in today's world where we have so many communication devices and software and tools at our disposal, that
Mhm.
communication is still something that is still quite challenging for
Yeah.
us. And it doesn't matter what size, what scale of business. If you can streamline that, if you can get the right strategy in place and the right tools, it'll definitely help. But no matter what, it takes effort. It's not just tools alone. And so, again, really good for you to recognize that that is a challenge, and just really managing and the people, the partners, the providers, as opposed to being managed by them or driven by these external forces. And it's
Exactly.
a challenge, yeah. So it'll be something that I'm sure in the future when we have you back on and we talk about this amazing growth and expansion that you've had around the globe, the next time we'll be able to talk about that a little bit again and to see what you did to overcome some of that. So anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your story. I think some of the lessons that you've had and the things that you're doing to overcome, I think, are going to help a lot of the entrepreneurs who are listening to this show today. So thank you so much, Isabelle, for coming on and chatting about Remix Snacks.
Thank you again for having me, Lance, and hope everyone was able to learn something from this.
So for those of you who are listening right now and want to check out our past episodes, you can head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. You'll find our full vault of archives there. And if you happen to be an entrepreneur who has an interesting story that you'd like to share, there's a form on that page which you can fill out so you can be a guest potentially in the future. So until next time, I wish everybody a prosperous day.